Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Thursday, December 9th. This is Africa 54.
BioNTech and Pfizer announce a breakthrough in vaccinating against the Omicron variant. Tanzania marks the 60th anniversary of its independence from Britain. And Sudan is cut off from hundreds of millions in international funding following the November coup.
We begin with a COVID-19 update from the World Health Organization. The WHO recommended Thursday that people who are immunocompromised or received an inactivated COVID-19 vaccine should receive a booster dose to protect against waning immunity. Many countries have been rolling out booster shots targeting the elderly and people with underlying health issues, but worries about the new Omicron variant are prompting some to expand their use to larger portions of their populations. Speaking in a briefing, Strategic Advisory Group of Experts Chair Alejandro Cravioto says emerging data shows that vaccines' efficacy against COVID-19 wanes, with a significant decline seen in older people in particular.
So there is emerging data that shows a decline in vaccine effectiveness against SARS-CoV-2 infection and COVID-19, with a more significant decline in older adults. This evidence is largely based on observational studies, with variation in the results from different platforms and, of course, different population groups. But the current data shows that vaccines have a robust level of protection against severe forms of disease for at least 6 months, although some waning has been observed against severe disease, especially in older adults or those with underlying medical conditions.
Kate O'Brien, the WHO's vaccine director, highlighted vaccine inequality at the meeting and says wealthy countries donating COVID-19 vaccines with a relatively short shelf life is a problem for the COVAX dose sharing program. She also warns that richer countries may start to hoard COVID-19 vaccines again, threatening global supplies as they seek to shore up stocks to fight the new Omicron variant. BioNTech and Pfizer says a 3-shot course of their COVID-19 vaccine is able to neutralize the new Omicron variant in a laboratory test, and they could deliver a vaccine targeted at it in March 2022 if needed. Francis Maguire reports.
A 3-shot course of Pfizer and BioNTech's vaccine does work against the new Omicron variant. That's according to both drug makers Wednesday, citing a lab test. The results suggest the variant can partially evade protection from 2 doses of the vaccine, but a 3rd jab helped fight off the virus much better. That was in line with findings from the Africa Health Research Institute in South Africa. Willem Hanekom is executive director there.
Omicron may escape some of the immunity that the Pfizer vaccine causes. That's the main finding. At the moment, we need to learn much more about what the implications of that finding is and whether this will hold true in terms of protection of people after Pfizer vaccination. We still believe that the vaccine will protect against severe disease and death.
A lab analysis in Germany found a much lower antibody response to Omicron even after 3 shots. But Pfizer and BioNTech were optimistic that their shots could still protect against any severe disease from the new variant. The pair also said they could deliver an Omicron-based shot in March next year if needed. The companies are still expected to deliver 4 billion doses of their vaccine in 2022. In late November, the World Health Organization classified Omicron as a variant of concern, but it hasn't yet called for a new treatment to be developed. Data on how shots from Moderna, Johnson & Johnson and other drug makers fare against Omicron is expected within weeks.
Francis Maguire of Reuters filed that report. South Africa is reporting nearly 20,000 new COVID-19 cases, a record since the Omicron variant was detected, and 36 new COVID-related deaths. It is not yet clear how many of the infections were caused by Omicron, given only a fraction of samples are sequenced, but experts believe it is driving South Africa's fourth wave of infections. The statistics from the National Institute for Communicable Diseases brought the confirmed number of cases in the country to just over 3 million, with more than 90,000 COVID-linked deaths since the pandemic started. Early evidence suggests Omicron is more transmissible than any previous variant, but that symptoms may be less severe with lower levels of hospitalization, especially in vaccinated patients. Now to Tanzania, where residents this week are marking the 60th anniversary of independence from Britain and a long journey toward the goal of building their own democratic nation. But despite forming a multi-party system, Tanzania has always been dominated by one party, that the Party of the Revolution. Charles Kombe reports from Dar es Salaam.
80-year-old Paul Lerata recalls Tanzania's independence in 1961. He says life today is better than back then, though not for everyone.
When we got independence, things were not good because our president struggled a lot when fighting for independence. There was not that much development, but as time went on, at least there was progress, but very minimal. There were still no good roads and few schools. Currently, things have changed, but still, Tanzanians are struggling with their lives.
One thing that hasn't changed is the ruling party. Since 1961, Chama cha Mapinduzi, or the Party for Revolution, has dominated Tanzania's political landscape. Its leaders believe the ruling party is the only one capable of developing the country.
60 years of independence within mainland Tanzania, many big things have been done. All the leaders have done many big things depending on the economic, political, and financial situation at that time. So, fortunately, all the transformations were made by the government ruled by the Chama cha Mapinduzi party.
Analysts say the current constitution enables the ruling party to continue its overwhelming dominance. The president appoints election officers, the chief judge, and other top decision makers. Critics say those officers are almost certain to side with the ruling party in any disputes.
Kusalia madarakani kwa chama cha siasa.
To remain in power for a political party, particularly the ruling CCM, is one thing, but to continue remaining in power is another thing, because Tanzania's constitution says Tanzania will be a free, democratic country that follows a multi-party system. Unfortunately, when we shifted into a multi-party system, the constitution that was formed under a single-party system remained. So you can see there are some weaknesses. Those weaknesses, in my opinion, favor the ruling party to continue in power.
Rights activists and the opposition Chadema party have called for an update to the constitution, which was passed in 1977. But some Tanzanians say they don't care how long the party remains in power, as long as Tanzania remains peaceful.
I'm proud to be Tanzanian because Tanzania is a country at peace. We thank God, since before and after independence, despite being many things that have happened in the world, including wars.
While Tanzanians have a lot to be happy about after 60 years of independence, the Founding Fathers' dream of a country where inclusion underpins its political sphere has not been realized, according to some. When and if it happens, Lerata hopes to be around for all the changes. Charles Kombe for VOA News in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Here in Washington, VOA Swahili reporter Sandy Shomari spoke with Elsie Kanza, the Tanzanian ambassador to the United States, and he asked her about her message on the 60th anniversary of the country's independence.
We're very excited to be celebrating 60 years of our 60th anniversary for Tanzania mainland, and at the same time we're celebrating 60 years of diplomatic cooperation between Tanzania and the United States of America. So this is truly a special moment for us here. And what's critical also as we look ahead to the next 60 years is how we can build and strengthen our economic diplomacy engagement. And in this regard, we very much believe and are upholding the philosophy that Her Excellency President Samia Suluhu Hassan has shared, that Tanzania is open for business. And here in particular, I really want to encourage our Tanzanians, both in Tanzania and here in the diaspora, that there are opportunities available, such as Prosper Africa, which is an initiative by the American government, which supports companies from around the world, not just American companies. So it is possible, and our role here really is to ensure that we support Tanzanian companies as well as American companies and individuals interested in investing in Tanzania to be able to do so and to do so profitably.
That was Tanzanian ambassador to the United States, Elsie Kanza, speaking to VOA Swahili reporter Sandy Shomari. Sudan was unable to access $650 million in international funding in November when assistance was paused after a coup, according to the finance minister of the dissolved government. This freeze now puts in doubt basic import payments and the fate of economic reforms in the country. Olivia Chan explains.
Sudan was unable to access $650 million in international funding in November when assistance was paused after a coup. That's according to the finance minister of the dissolved government, Jibril Ibrahim. The freeze puts in doubt basic import payments and the fate of economic reforms. Ibrahim, who was appointed to a civilian transitional government in February, said the main impact would be on development projects covering areas including water supply, electricity, agriculture, health and transport. He said he hoped international support would return gradually over the next 3 to 6 months. Meanwhile, bills could be paid and reforms would continue.
Basically, we depend on tax, customs and gold revenues and on different state companies working in various fields.
Ibrahim said Sudan would seek investment rather than grants from wealthy Gulf Arab states that now face their own economic challenges.
Up till now, there have not been any promises of support from any country, Arab or non-Arab. But contacts with all friendly states continue, and with the international community as well.
Foreign funding was seen as crucial in helping Sudan emerge from decades of isolation and supporting a transition towards democracy that began with the 2019 overthrow of Omar al-Bashir. But the October 25th coup upended that transition. The US has put on hold $700 million in economic assistance since the coup. The World Bank, which had promised $2 billion in grants, has paused disbursements.
That was Olivia Chan of Reuters reporting. A resurgence of violence in Cameroon between herders and farmers has killed at least 22 people and injured more than 30 others this week in the nation's far north region, according to a regional government official. The violence has forced many residents to flee to Chad. Hundreds of people fleeing the violence between Arab Choa herders and Musgum and Massa farmers have streamed across the border into neighboring Chad, according to Ali Haroun, the mayor of Chad's capital, N'Djamena. A traditional leader in northern Cameroon, who asked not to be named, told Reuters the violence erupted over access to water. We would like to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, a Nigerian designer incorporates artifacts into fashion to promote the country's cultural heritage. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54. The United States is launching a virtual summit for democracy on Thursday, hosting more than 100 world leaders, civil society activists and journalists in what it says is the largest gathering of its kind ever held. As VOA senior diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain reports, the State Department says America is approaching the global attack on democracy with humility and confidence.
The hours-long seizure of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th by supporters of Donald Trump seeking to overturn his electoral defeat shook many around the world, including incoming President Joe Biden. That attack is part of what moved Biden to host a major summit for democracy, says U.S. Undersecretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights, Uzra Zeya.
We approach this week with both humility and confidence. Humility in that we want to listen and learn and don't shy away from our shortcomings. Confidence in our constant striving for a more perfect union and our certainty that working together, democracies can and will deliver for the world's citizens, regardless of the raw deal that autocrats and authoritarians try to sell.
The January 6th insurrection left its mark and is influencing how other countries behave on the world stage, according to Brian Katulis of the Middle East Institute.
I hear more of a posture from countries, friends, adversaries, competitors alike, that many of them are going to be hedging against the United States, meaning they're not going to be all in necessarily, in part because they see the world's changing, but then to a large degree, they worry about a pendulum swing in the United States, meaning, they saw things shift substantially from President Obama to President Trump, and now it's shifting in a different direction under President Biden.
The struggle between the world's democracies and authoritarian governments has been a central focus of the Biden administration's foreign policy, with crises in Myanmar, Haiti, and Sudan, among many other places. Authoritarian leaders of countries like Russia and China are not invited to the summit. Russia and China have criticized the summit itself as anti-democratic and divisive. On a recent visit to Kenya, Secretary of State Antony Blinken described what he called a worrying democracy recession on the African continent and around the world.
Democracy falling back. It's being tested, democracy, in all sorts of ways, from inside and from outside. And we've seen citizens' trust in democracy decrease. We've seen bad actors play up some of the divisions that exist within democracies. Independent institutions challenged and undermined. Journalists, human rights activists threatened and attacked.
Biden envisions the summit as kicking off a year of action, promoting democracy, fighting corruption and extremism, and protecting detained and threatened journalists and human rights activists around the world. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
2 journalists from Russia and the Philippines are scheduled to receive the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo Friday. The Norwegian Nobel Committee says it is honoring the pair for their efforts to safeguard press freedom. Henry Ridgwell has more.
The Nobel Peace Prize is the latest accolade for Filipino-American journalist Maria Ressa, who has received numerous awards for her efforts to defend press freedom in the Philippines. She spoke to reporters at Manila Airport Tuesday on her way to Friday's Nobel ceremony in Oslo.
There's a part of me that is happy, yes, but also angry, and hoping for a better future ahead.
Ressa founded the news website Rappler, which has had its license suspended by Philippine authorities. She is an outspoken critic of President Rodrigo Duterte, and her scrutiny of the government's often deadly war on drugs has seen her clash with authorities. She has been arrested several times, most recently in 2020 when she was convicted of cyber libel and was sentenced to 6 years in jail. She is currently out on bail. Further libel charges were filed against her and 6 other news organizations Wednesday by a Filipino government minister. Earlier this week, a Manila court gave Ressa permission to travel to Oslo, ruling she was not a flight risk.
Look, it feels like it's really a small price to pay to keep doing our jobs, but we shouldn't have to worry about this. I shouldn't have 10 arrest warrants. I shouldn't be out on bail. There's so many shouldn'ts.
Ressa is sharing the 2021 prize with Russian journalist Dmitry Muratov, editor-in-chief of the newspaper Novaya Gazeta, a frequent critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Since 2006, Novaya Gazeta journalists have been killed in connection with their work, including top investigative reporter Anna Polikovskaya. Muratov spoke to reporters in October after learning of his win.
For us, this prize means the recognition of the memory of our late colleagues.
Novaya Gazeta was co-founded by former Soviet leader and fellow Nobel Peace Laureate Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev called Muratov a courageous journalist. When President Putin was asked about Muratov's Nobel Prize in October, he gave this warning.
If he tries hiding behind the Nobel Prize, using it as a shield to violate Russian law, then he will be doing it deliberately to attract attention to himself or some other reason.
It is the first time since 1935 that the Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to journalists.
If you care about being able to shape the society in which you live, if you care about being able to hold leaders accountable, if you care about solving problems like climate change or figuring our way out of this pandemic, then you need to be informed. And you can't be informed if journalists can't do their job.
Both the Philippine and Russian governments deny targeting journalists or stifling a free press. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
In the summer of 2014, Islamic State group militants swept into the Yazidi enclave in northern Iraq, slaughtering thousands of men and kidnapping about 6,000 women and children. 7 years later, about half of the abductees are still missing. Almost the entire Yazidi population remains displaced, and many graves are still without bodies. VOA's Heather Murdoch reports from Kankan in the Kurdistan region of Iraq.
By the time Siban Khalil returned home nearly 3 months ago, her family had already chosen a gravesite and laid a marker. They were told she had killed herself after she was kidnapped and taken to Syria as a slave.
It was the ugliest thing to me, especially when I saw my grave next to my father's and brother's. They had dug 3 graves for us.
In 2014, Khalil was taken by Islamic State group fighters as they slaughtered thousands of Yazidi men before herding 6,000 women and children into trucks and buses, eventually to be sold or given away as slaves. At the time, she was 13.
He beat me, but mostly he sexually assaulted me.
In 2019, IS lost the last parcel of land it had controlled in Syria, but Khalil was held by smugglers and didn't hear the news. When she found out, it took another year for her to find a way home. When she returned, she found Yazidi cities and towns abandoned, and nearly the entire population still displaced, 4 years after IS was defeated in Iraq. Yazidi families are still impoverished, displaced, and devastated from what the United Nations investigators call a genocide.
We didn't take anything with us except our clothes and our souls. We left everything, our sheep, our goats, our cars, and our homes behind.
Families are still searching for about 3,000 still missing people, with many believed to be alive in captivity. Resources to help them search have dwindled to almost nothing. Aid workers in Kojo, once a Yazidi town in Iraq, pick through mass graves, trying to identify the remains of the dead. When Khalil returned, she called her brother, who did not recognize her voice.
When I turned the camera on and he saw me, he was shocked and couldn't say a word.
Khalil says after 2 forced marriages, she never wants to marry by choice. Her greatest fear, she adds, is that with tens of thousands of IS fighters in jail, with no trials, others still free, and waning international concern, is that one day this will happen again. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Khanka, Iraq.
Oh, a Nigerian designer is incorporating artifacts like the famous Benin bronzes into fashion accessories, hoping to promote the country's cultural heritage as well as make a profit. Clara Frank has the details.
This is jewelry by Nigerian designer Tosan Ide, who is incorporating artifacts like the famous Benin bronzes into fashion accessories. At his shop in Lagos, each piece of design represents Nigerian tradition and culture.
People might not really be able to speak their languages, but symbols always resonate. And it's something we felt that everyone could resonate with, like anywhere around the world, just being of African heritage.
Among the jewelry are gold rings depicting Queen Idia Mask, a 16th century queen mother from the Kingdom of Benin. Also on display is a ring topped with a jekri sword, a symbol of the Niger Delta's Itsekiri people, which is associated with courage and royalty and believed to have magical powers.
And I feel that we want to create products that people can have for a long time. They can pass from generations to generations and know that this is true African heritage, which is timeless.
The pieces sell for over $31 and above, depending on the material and design. The company has sold over 12,000 pieces and hope to replicate cultural symbols of other African countries. Clara Frank, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.